So today is, I don't know what today is. Today is December the 2nd. And I know the last time that I made a video, well, quite a few of them, I gave a little quick synopsis of my dating life and me being single. Well, I decided to elaborate today. And I waited so long to elaborate because the situation was really, really hot and heavy. And so I had to make sure that, the coast was clear before I decided to talk about it because I just don't like drama. But at the same time, it kind of feels like drama finds me for whatever reason. So let's talk about it. I have different sets of people that I mingle with, and within these different sets of people, I met this guy. Not my typical guy, not a guy that I would normally date. He was very, very laid back. Just, a couple of different reasons that I wouldn't date him. I loved the fact that he was laid back. That's what attracted me to him. But as far as he was really slender. Me personally, I kind of like a thicker guy because, I don't want to see I don't want to see anybody's heartbeat. You know what I'm saying? So I prefer a thicker guy, whatever. But nevertheless, I'm single. I'm mingling. I'm changing up things about, my taste or whatever. I'm trying not to be shallow or anything like that because I don't like to come off like that. Nevertheless, this guy was going through a divorce. He had been separated for a year. He's going through a divorce, all those things. But, we clicked. Cool. We started hanging out, we would go to the movies, things like that. Different, I'm very adventurous, so I like to do different things whatever. So we started hanging out. But we were never exclusive. We never talked about being exclusive or dating. I kind of knew he wanted to talk to me about it, but I never allowed him to ask me because I'm not ready for that. I've had a lot of situations in my past where guys have, cheated, lied, and I just ain't got time for that. I'm about my paper. And so that's what I try to stress in any type of relationship, friendship, whatever. So long story short. So I talk about, I connected with another associate of mine. She wanted to meet up so that we could talk about, the distance in our friendship or whatever. Cool. I'm always down. Let's go to the Cuban spot. I love Cuban nachos. Let's go. So we're doing that. And while I'm in there talking to her, I see this guy that I have not seen since high school. And we were super duper cool. Walk to school together. Cool. Super cool, super cool, super cool. So I go over and I'm like, it is him. Bam, we connect. All right, cool. So when I leave, the guy that I was talking to, he calls me. He's like, hey, did you have fun with your friend? How did everything go with your friend? I'm like, oh, it was dope. I had a great time. And while I was there, I saw this guy that I used to go to school with. I haven't seen him in 20 years. It was so crazy. What are the odds? He walked in the Cuban spot. I hadn't talked to her in months, so it was crazy. It seemed like it was ordained. Bam. So in my excitement, I mentioned the guy's name. So I'm rambling on, and I mentioned the guy's name. So he automatically says, oh, I know him. And I was like, you do? So I say to myself, Tyson, shut the fuck up. So I stopped talking about that. And I'm like, yeah, it was really cool. The end. I changed the subject. So the next day, the guy that I was friends with from my past texts me. And he says, it was awesome to see you. Let's link up and get a drink. Cool. I'm always down. I'm not a drinker, but I'm always down for the atmosphere. I like to mingle. I like to be entertained. Sure. So the guy that I was talking to, he's like, oh, so what are your plans for the weekends? Da, 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 da. So I'm like, I'm going to link up with a friend. I'm going to chop it up with my friend or whatever. And that's that. I never mention who it is. I never, make reference to whether it's a male or a female. I just simply say, I'm going to link up with my friend. That was it. So he was like, okay, cool. So cool. So the day goes on, life goes on, work, children, all of that stuff, life goes on. So later on that night, I get a call from the friend from the past. And he's like, yo, you dressed yet? And I'm like, it ain't gonna take me long. What you want me to do? So he's like, meet me, near the bar. Cool. So I get in my truck, I drive downtown or whatever. When he pulls up beside me, because it was difficult parking. It's difficult parking in the city as it would be in any city. It's difficult parking. So when I call him and I'm like, hey, where can I park? He's like, I'm going to pull up beside you. You follow me, and then I'm going to show you where you can park your car. So I said, cool. So that happens. He pulls up beside me. When he pulls up beside me, I look over and I see that there is a female in the front seat, which really, I was like, but me and him have never, ever had any type of intimate relationship. We've always been homies, real cool. So for him to have a female with him, I was like, Tyson, it's okay. So I was like, shit, whatever. We rocking. We've always been cool. And no need for me to think outside the box. Cool. So I follow him. I park my car where he tells me to park his car. He puts his parking pass into my car. By the time I get out of my car and walk around to get into his car, the female is now in the back. She's in the back seat. So I'm like, I said, why she get in the back? He said, because you sitting in the front. And I was like, oh, okay, royal treatment. I'm for it. So he opens the door. I get in the car. So at this point, he's in the car. We're in the car. I'm putting on my seatbelt. He's pulling off. So I'm putting on my seatbelt. He's pulling off. And so I turn around to be polite, and I say, and she sticks her hand out, and she says, I am such and such. And I say, well, I'm Tyson. And I look at my friend, and I go, really? It was the guy that I was dating, his wife. Not the guy in the car's wife, but the wife of the guy that I had been talking to who's going through a divorce. How the fuck did she end up in the car? So at this point, all types of red flags are going through my head. I am like, red flag, alert, 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 alert. But we're already driving off. And he's saying to me, no, it's not the type of party, it's not the type of party. He was like, everything is cool. And I'm just saying to him, really? Really? So I'm texting my friend. I'm like, listen, I'm in an interesting plot. My biggie came through. I'm in an interesting plot. You know what I'm saying? This is what's going on. So when we got to where we were going, we got out of the car. I took a picture of her. I took a picture of him. And I sent it to my friend because I'm like, at this moment, I'm vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? Anything could happen. They could chop me up and throw me in the river, Anything could happen. So I was just like, think fast. I didn't have nothing on me. I'm like, what am I going to do? Lip gloss these motherfuckers to death? Like, what am I, mac them down? I couldn't do that. So we go into the establishment, and I'm already, like, on guard. I'm like, listen, I ain't feeling it. I'm not rocking with this. I'm uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? When I'm over here, she need to be over there. I'm not fooling it. I feel like this is some crazy stuff, and I don't like it. So the night goes on. She goes her way. She go and wild out and do her. Girlfriend was wow. When I say wow. And we almost 40 years old, and I'm like, you still doing that in the club? Like, that's crazy. Like, I ain't never did that, but I know back in the day people was doing stuff in the club, and she was still doing that, which led me to believe that she was fucking crazy. Not nobody that I would be around. So I made sure I kept my distance. So I'm like, okay. So the next day, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm at work, so I got to keep guard. I have an office, but everybody be knocking on my door. It'd be a lot. But anyway, the next day, the guy who I was talking to, previously dating, the guy A, I was talking to, he called me. He's like, how was it with your friends? Did you have a good night? And I said, very vaguely and nonchalantly, it was interesting. And I left it like that. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to discuss it because at this point, I feel like he set me up because he's the only person that knew that I knew, you know what I'm saying, this guy, and I'm sorry, I did leave something out. When I mentioned the guy's name previously, he said, "Oh, that's my wife's homeboy." And that was it. That's all. That was it. And so we changed the subject. And then fast forward to the next day. So I said it was interesting, and I left it alone. So our conversation, it was very, very short, and I was very, very vague because I was definitely not with the shits because I was feeling the way I was feeling, and there was nobody that could change my mind about that. So I hit up my girl after I got off the phone with him, and I was just, elaborating on the story, trying to make sense of it all because it was just very interesting to me. So I was trying to make sense of it all. So when I just talking to her, she was like, "Well, you need to ask him about it." So I called him back, and I'm like, "Listen, it's something that's wrecking my brain, and I wasn't going to ask you about it, but the fact that I can't let it go, I have to ask you about it." So he's like, "What's up?" So I told him, long story short, why was your wife there? How did she know? And he was like, "Oh, I told her." You what? Why would you do that? He was like, "I felt like she needed to know." But why did you feel like she needed to know? He said, "Because I just felt like she needed to know." Why the fuck would your wife need to know what the fuck I'm doing? I don't know that broad. I barely know you, my nigga. Like, why does she need to know anything about what I'm doing? So he says, "Well, I just felt like you guys were going to run across each other at some point or another." And I said, "How did you figure that? What gave you that idea?" He said, "Because you say you knew her friend." Right. But I told him, you didn't know whether or not me and this guy exchanged phone numbers. You didn't know if we were ever going to see each other again. I mean, for goodness sake, it had been 20 years before I saw him that night. So how did you figure that we were going to see each other again? So he's like, "Well, I just figured you guys were." So at that moment, I gathered, bitch, you told your wife so that if her friend spoke of me, she would be on the alert and could come back and tell you. What type of nasty sex slave triangle witchery are y'all doing? Like, that shit doesn't make any sense to me. How the fuck is your wife your goddamn your wingman or your lookout? Like, I don't understand it. That was whack to me. Super duper whack. So at that point, my respect level went from a 10 to a motherfucking 5. So I'm like, how did you feel that we were going to see each other again? Why was it necessary for you to divulge my information to her? He was like, "Well, I didn't tell you, but a while ago she had asked to meet you because my son, I did meet his son in an open setting. Like, we went to a parade or whatever. So my kids were there, and we just was like, oh, okay, hey, you guys are here. Hey, how you doing?" Like, that type of situation. We, exchanged names or whatever, and that was it. But me and his son have the same name, which was awesome. The cutest little thing ever. But we have the same name. So he told his mom, which, naturally, that's what kids do. So in my head, I'm putting it all together because I'm a big behavior analyst. I do that. So in my head, I'm putting everything together, and I'm like, listen. So I have this woman. I had put myself in her shoes. This woman has her son saying something about me, and now her husband has said something about me, and if this dude has said something about me to her, that's 3 different people coming at her. So it's hitting her in 3 different ways. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, she's wondering, who the fuck is this bitch? So she strategically placed herself on my fucking outing, date, encounter, whatever. So I'm going, talking about it with this guy or whatever, and with the guy about his wife, and he's just talking. He's like, "Well, she asked me if you had a job, and I told her, yeah. She asked me what you do, and I told her, yeah." And I was like, what the, like, really? Who the fuck does that? Why the fuck are you telling your wife about me? You don't even know if we are going to be in a relationship. I could be here today, gone tomorrow. You don't know what the fuck is going to happen between us, but you feel the need to divulge all my information to this bro who I don't motherfucking know. Respect level from 10 to 5 to 3. Now I'm livid. Now I'm pissed. So I hung up the phone with him, and then I called my friend from 20 years ago, and he's like, "Listen, I don't know what's going on." He was like, "The crazy thing is, I was calling to tell her about you and how I hadn't seen you in 20 years, and she ended up telling me about you." So I'm like, so why the fuck would you even bring her with you knowing the dynamics of the relationship. So he said, that's my homegirl. She said she didn't care. Like, she ain't been with him. She don't want him. They going through a divorce. She ain't care. She ain't care. So I'm like, what the fuck possessed you to do that shit, yo? I mean, when I tell you I'm so blown, like, so long story short, every motherfucking body's cut off. The nigga that won't my type in the motherfucking beginning, off. The dude I haven't seen in 20, it's going to be 20 more before we see each other again. The broad, dead. I just don't have time for that shit, yo. So when I tell you, the shit was so crazy, and the guy who I was talking to, he called and he wants to apologize and all of this shit, and I'm just like, nigga, you strategically came up with a plan with your wife to find out what the fuck I'm doing. And we're not even in a relationship. If this is how you live your life, shorty, And he says to me, well, she's my best friend. And listen, let me get this straight. I am all for healthy co-parenting and people having healthy relationships with each other. Me and my children's father, we have a very healthy relationship. We co-parent, we talk, we share advice. But what I will never do is call him my best friend, because there is an emotional attachment with us. There's an emotional attachment. So he could never be my best friend. Even though we haven't been together in ages, whenever I bring up somebody that I'm dating,